Paige, we're back, and I believe we're streaming live on Facebook again. So we are figuring this out one week at a time.
Yes, we are. Thank you for being patient with me this week.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to see you. Happy Friday. How's your week going?
Yeah, just a whole week of no school for my kids, just
Oh, wow.
managing mom life and work life. So yeah, it's been good though. I
Yeah,
got a few days of rest and back at it today.
nice, 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 nice. Yeah, that snow was something. So it postponed our winter wellness fair
Yeah.
till next weekend, the 7th. We'll be together.
Yeah, we need to share that anyway, right? So
Yeah, so we'll keep talking about that. And today for the Polarity Lab, I was thinking about that maybe it might be good to sort of do kind of like a basic 101 about masculine and feminine energies, about how that there are really beautiful differences here that we're wanting to embrace, and that this work and these conversations that we're having, and I think the work that we're doing independently, neither one of us is trying to blame the other side energetically. Like
um,
when there's problems coming up and there's a loss of polarity, it's not one person's fault. It's never just one person's fault. It's never all just a man's problem or a woman's problem or a masculine or a feminine problem. And I felt like maybe that's worth talking about a little bit, because I do think there are people out there in the internet, in the, social media world, that do want to sort of villainize and blame the other side
for
for for,
sure.
for problems. And it's really, for me personally, it's just really important that the information I'm sharing and conveying is not coming across like that. So I just thought it.
Yeah, but I also think it's important. We've talked about this from the masculine, like patriarchy that, you know, there's the nice guy syndrome. So I also think there's a part of this work that may feel edgy for some people because it looks like we're categorizing old paradigms that the feminist era, debunked. And at the same time, like I'm a bit unapologetic about the fact that the biology of the woman and male is very different, which is also a highly charged issue with gender issues. And I feel it's important because when we talk about this, we're not talking about those old 1950s housewife, like for the feminine anyway. I think there's this like tendency to think that we're like turning back the clock when it looks like they're traditional roles.
Mm,
And at the same time, I'm unapologetic. And what I mean by this is that the biology of a woman and the biology of a male is very different hormonally. And not only is it different hormonally, but the energetic systems of the two, gender differentiations are very potent and real. And at the same time, we know that the yin is within the yang and the yang is within the yin. So when you look at the yin yang, we talked about almost even our logo, like when you look at the yin and yang symbol, there is a touch of black in the white and a touch of white in the black. So these energies exist within both genders. Um, but truth be told, the vast majority of people in one gender category will fall more in that polarity.
mhm.
And yet there's a spectrum, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about this, but there's a spectrum. And even though you're a masculine man, you might be closer into that middle line towards the feminine or vice versa. So I know it gets really charged if there's not a deep understanding of what this is and what it means. And so it can sound as if we're asking people to look like they're falling into traditional gender roles.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yet I found the more I go into the polarity work, I'm a highly feminine being. And so what looks like the typical traditional feminine energy resonates with me.
Right.
More that I go into my polarity work. And yet I have a lot of strong masculine energy that has to show up and run a business, um, directive energy and things like that. So yeah, I'm sure you have a lot to say, but that's just my 2 cents worth. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm curious for you, when you started exploring, like what was the kind of pivotal moment for you when you sort of realized this, for yourself? Like, oh wow, I'm really pushing myself in all these masculine ways, and there's a part of me that's starving to reconnect with, my
That's a
feminine.
great question. That's a great question. I think that I grew up, my mom was more of a feminist, and I went to a women's college, and I was very in the strong feminist energy of like the 1990s to early 2000s. It was quite different than, say, the feminist era of like the 1960s.
Sure.
But women power and women becoming, improving themselves in the world was a huge part of my upbringing was, you get your education first, you prove yourself as a woman, you start your career, you become whole before you get married and have kids. It was very much like the messaging that came down from my mom. And that's a great question because when I found myself as a mom, I was really struggling because the first thing that happened when I was pregnant is I was like high powered, working in the real estate, urban planning, downtown, working 80 hours a week. And I was actually going to school getting a master's degree during that time. So I was like nonstop, type A personality, perfectionistic. And then I got pregnant. And I love this question, Peter, because I got pregnant and I've actually talked about this recently. Um, and everything shifted for me. Like having a baby in my belly was like the defining moment because my hormones weren't taking. I was like, I had amenorrhea. I only had one cycle because I was so type A and so perfectionistic. My hormones were so off. I only had one cycle a year. And I was told I would never get pregnant. And even I had 5 pregnancy tests and my hormones weren't taking to support the pregnancy. And then once I knew I was pregnant with Ainsley, I was like, I'm not giving her up, But I think my body was in such a state of like cortisol driven mode that the progesterone just wasn't like those relaxing hormones just weren't kicking on to support the pregnancy. But like when I went through that hormonal shift, um, I started reading a lot of books about, bringing a child into the world and what that meant. And there was a lot of initiation of the feminine to, one of the things that I read at the time was when you go through the ring of fire, which is actually the baby's head like coming out of you. If you don't have an epidural, it literally feels like a ring of fire. And I had chose a natural childbirth. So I was reading a lot of work around natural childbirthing and the natural process of like, breastfeeding and just like how I was going to bring this baby into the world when I was living a very masculine lifestyle. And that initiation crossing over from what I would call like a rite of passage for a male might be when he's in his teen years and like traditionally in tribal, a male might go through a rite of passage, but I believe for the woman, childbirthing is a major rite of passage into womanhood. And those hormonal shifts and like that natural childbirth experience like took me into a completely different space. And it debunked everything that I thought I knew womanhood was. And I mean, I did things the opposite. I mean, I nursed my kids, I made all their baby food from home, and I became very like salt of the earth kind of woman at that point. Got all the chemicals out of the household. Like I just became super um, organic in my process, but then like the whole thing of putting the baby in the crib and a bit kind of abandoning it and letting it cry it out just felt totally wrong to me. So I wanted to have, my baby sleeping in the bed with me. And it was just like all these things that were kind of taught to me felt wrong in my body and in my system. And I just felt like I wanted to be home with my baby girl. Like I was going out in the world, like selling real estate and doing like work that was what you would call meaningful, but the real meaning I was finding was like bonding with my child. And so I think that was like the very beginning of me being like, I don't know that I want to be a full-time working mom. I don't know that this is good for my kids and they need me and they're dependent upon me. So it just, my whole like pre-baby mindset from the time that Ainsley was born, everything that I knew was debunked. And that was just like the real awakening to womanhood for me.
Yeah. And like debunked, like the priority shifted for you. And
Right. Like I really like that maternal instinct was so strong. Like I wanted a baby. Like I made it up in my head and I was even though I was told I actually had a genetic issue. There's more to the story, but I actually had a genetic issue that told me I would never get pregnant. Like I had like less than 1% chance of like getting pregnant or whatever. It's kind of a long story. But anyway, so I didn't think that was possible for me, but everything shifted and then like this traditional idea of womanhood became more appealing when I was trying to be in this full masculine world. I mean, I was in at the time very much a part of commercial downtown real estate, which was highly predominantly masculine. I was working side by side with a big real estate guy in Louisville. And so I was in a man's world, but I was craving just to be so deeply home with my baby girl. And
yeah,
I was fighting these two realities and still trying to be like, well, I need to bring home the bacon and provide because it was 08, 09. We were in a recession. So money was like we had a condo when I was married, we had a condo in old Louisville and it wasn't selling on the market. And I was fully pregnant, sitting in every single weekend at an open house trying to sell property, like very much in a salesy mode, like make money, provide for the family, and then also just like wanting to just nurture my baby, be at home. And like when she was born, nurse, and like I wanted to just like leave that world behind, but I had this mindset that I couldn't,
right.
that it wasn't possible for me. So this was just like a natural transition, like a rite of passage, but it just really debunked or usurped like everything that I thought I knew.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a lot of people, that's probably it probably is indicative of the way people start to initially experience their own masculine or feminine nature. Like it's not intentional, it's not even consciously considered, but it's
Right.
there's something about a moment or what they're doing or a phase of life that they're
Yes.
in that lines up with that. And for guys, I mean, it literally might be as simple as like, oh, I was hanging out with my buddies and we went and played disc golf or something. And like, it was like, oh, just the guys, competitive, being funny, picking on each other, like playful, because those
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
the things that like masculine, may be drawn to. But then again, we're like told, oh, no, no, you've got to be good in school, but then not overly competitive and not oppressing people who aren't as competent or smart or other genders and at least these are the things that I felt. I feel like coming up the ways that I really tampered my own masculine energy. And I was raised primarily by a single mom, I
Right.
I mean, I had a father and my relationship with my dad really developed more as we were adults before he died and when I had children and when he was able to really show up for them as a gramps and stuff. But I mean, my upbringing was through mom and I went to a Catholic school and had nuns for teachers and like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, and that's so huge. Like, I sent you this podcast. It was all about testosterone, and what they're finding is like because boys are mostly predominantly in the classroom with women, that what the brain is showing, through like adolescence and testosterone like coming online, these masculine, like testosterone type behaviors, which are natural, are being punished, like that playful. So my son, like, I can't tell you he's 13, but last year my phone rang every single week from a teacher or the principal emailing me and telling me my son was bad, and me being like, he's being a boy. And I was listening to this, and it's so fascinating because, like, there's something wrong in the educational system right now where this playful, competitive. So the guy that was like doing the podcast talked about, this is kind of funny, but not very PC, but like how he would watch the guys, like when they're competitive, they flick each other in the balls. And he's
Right?
like, you don't see girls like when they're like in high school walking around flicking each other in their private part. But these, like the boys, they were playing like tag football or something. He's like, they were doing it the entire, like it was like a pool party or something. And he's like, they've counted like 100 some odd flicks, like to the ass or the ball sack. And he was like, you don't see girls doing that, but it's like it is this like testosterone, like kind of alpha energy, like playful but competitive at the same time. And so like this rough and tumble boy gets shamed for being a boy. And they were just saying how that there needs to be this new shift within the school system to allow for this natural occurring like development in boys. So my son over the last year had a lot of struggle, but luckily he had a male principal that would call me and be like, he's just being a boy. Like, I know it sounds like I'm calling you a lot and it sounds like your son's in a lot of trouble, but he's just doing what these boys do. And I was like, well, God, like, like relief to have this male principal call me and at least be like, he's just being a boy. But yeah, I mean, like we act like we're the same, but we really are different. And if we can just allow those differences, and I know, again, I don't even want to be politically correct because I do know the biology of testosterone and progesterone, estrogen are so these master hormones like really do have a strong influence on us. I mean, like I was saying, like I had it in my head that like when I wanted Ainsley, I was pregnant on the first try. I was convinced that like that maternal instinct kicked in and it was like high drive. The hormones were like running the show. Um, so yeah, I can't imagine like, and this is why I think this work is so pertinent for males and why I actually love teaming up with you is I think it's a really hardship for males to for young males to not have that rite of passage that they had pre-modern times, like
Sure.
where you would be taken out into the woods or taught how to fight or fight it out in the ring with a boy or have a vision quest or do something that allowed you that opportunity to explore your manhood without shame or blame or whatever. It would just have been a natural process.
Right. And to feel like you had passed through some sort of gauntlet, and on the other side, now you are part of this culture of men in your community or in your tribe. Yeah,
Right, but I think that's lacking. Like, in
it is
fact,
lacking. No, that's what I'm saying. It's totally.
yeah, like my son, again, he's going to be 14 in March, but this is so predominant in my thinking right now because they're sacred sons and they actually do a between 14 and 18-year-old boys, they take them out to California, they go out in the desert and they do a whole rite of passage with boys that they're not getting from their fathers. And I'm like, I want to sign him up for like his freshman year, summer, to give him that rite of passage that I can't give him as a mom. And I mean, it's so clear to me having a 13 to 14-year-old boy, like he's not who he was a year ago. Um and I think he shouldn't be shamed for just expressing his puberty being that shift into his manhood.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
How do you think, let's imagine a couple, right, who's interested in this, maybe a couple who's been watching us talk about this stuff, and they're one, they're in a committed relationship. They've been doing counseling, they've been working on the relationship, but secretly in the back of each other's minds, they're pointing the finger,
Absolutely.
if only she could get this down and would stop doing this thing, we'd be
Yeah.
better. And she's saying, if only he would stop talking like this and raising his voice, or,
Right.
like, what is the way to help people in this situation to kind of, get on the same team? And
Yeah, I don't want to like knock therapy because I think it's highly important. However, what I found personally is what happens having been in and out of therapy in a past marriage and an engagement. What I have found is that typically what happens is exactly what you're saying is like, well, you did this, and this is my beef with you. I've got a beef, and we're going to play it out in the ring here in therapy. Like, we're going to take these beefs and we're going to go in the ring together. And like, you did that. Like, it's like a laundry list of things that you're unhappy about. And that does not build polarity. Like, in fact, like, again, I don't want to knock therapy because I have received a lot of benefit from therapy. And at the same time, I don't think it's the solution for polarity because it destroys polarity.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it like the opposite would be, and we talked on this last time, and I feel like I interrupted you a lot in the last polarity lab because I think I was on one wavelength and you were on another wavelength, but like I, I think that, and I kept bringing this up the last time, but like one of the things that's so, so helpful in polarity is fun, magnetism, like bringing back,
mhm.
oh shoot, I got to charge this again before I lose this polarity lab, but I'll let you talk for a minute. But like that is not going to bring magnetism. If you're literally like pointing your finger at your partner, those walls are going to go up. It's human nature on either side of the fence, and it's not going to create polarity. It's not the dance you want to be in.
I think too, yeah, and
I'm
again,
gonna let you talk for a minute while I plug this in so we don't
yeah,
disconnect.
and I want to second what you said. Therapy is great. I mean, it is another tool that is valuable, and I'm so grateful for the therapist and the coaches and the people I've
Yes.
worked with independently and in past relationships. And I know we've talked about Terry Real, who his recent book Us, and he, one of the first really transformative books for me was I Don't Want to Talk About It, which was his book about male depression. But I really like one of the things that, he talks about with kind of his modified, updated therapeutic approach is relational life therapy. And I like this thing that he says. He says, what we try to do with relational life therapy is work on the parts of you that don't do the things you should be doing, and you're learning in these other ways and places, right? And so I think that's the thing too that can happen. It's like, we can go to therapy, we can see these dynamics playing out, we can have an understanding of what our partner does and what we do. You're jumping in on your phone. Is that where you're coming? Nice. I see you. And so we can have these things, but then when the real moments come up, when the tension comes up between, we don't yet have the skill, the nervous system, alignment to implement those appropriately. And I think working on and becoming connected to our own masculine and feminine energies and how we can utilize those, I think that is a valuable piece for that process. And the polarity is just one lens really to kind of explore it. Um, that.
Yeah, yeah. I like give an example of how that would work. Because you said we should probably give some examples of like what might happen.
Well, I mean, I know for me, just the nervous system, dysregulation. Like I can be in an argument with a girlfriend, and there's the part of me that is feeling blamed,
Mhm.
right? Or judged. And again, maybe that's what's happening. Maybe there is a projection of something onto me
Mhm.
by then wanting to first defend and say, wait a second, here's what you're doing. And realistically, if you weren't doing that, I wouldn't even have to justify this. So we're playing this kind of litigation. You did, I did, here's this. And for me, the practice has been breathe, slow down, feel my own nervous system, my feminine, my masculine energies, how they're getting churned up in this, and then sitting with it and being very intentional to show up in the masculine presence in stability that I want to bring to my relationships and saying, hey, don't let this emotional intensity here knock you over. Breathe through it. Let it hit you. It may not be about you,
Mhm.
and you don't have to defend or excuse yourself. Now, so staying in that more present space then allows me to truly feel where my partner is from a feeling standpoint, not so much getting caught up in the words and the stories and the stuff that, plays out. So like that's just a tapping into the masculine presence stuff. And I don't know that that's a skill that boys and men are really taught, right? I mean, because
Well, I think that's why the work is powerful because unless you grew up, I think this is really like the ideal situation. You grew up in a system where nervous system regulation was something that both your parents had. But the vast majority of people we know just don't have that ideal upbringing. So I think if you have two securely attached partners who grew up with two securely attached parents on both sides, then in that ideal situation, a boy would have witnessed his dad, you know, and also the feminine would have been with a mother who had a lot of respect and knew how to bring things to the table without like criticizing and blaming. She was so like the truth of the matter is that very few of us grew up in that environment. So if we didn't receive it, and I wrote about that this last week in my own post about the polarity of, if we didn't receive that, or we came from, divorced, sorry, my son keeps calling in, like talking
yep.
about a 13-year-old, he has no boundaries. He's like, Mom, my mom, like immediately. But yeah, I mean, if you didn't grow up with that, dynamic, then you have to do some level of like nervous system regulation work. I think what happens, and we've kind of alluded to this in other polarity labs, but what happens is a lot of times couples that do stay together for the long time, they just start avoiding each other. They just start to, really allow the sleeping dogs lie, or like, let she sleep it, push it under the rug or down in the closet, and it put it in the closet and act like it's going to go away, but that creates long-term resentment and depolarizes the relationship.
Yeah, right. Neither party's showing up in, for each other or bringing that masculine feminine charge that creates the polarity, creates the attraction, the eros
Yes.
energy, and allows the couple to, reconnect in that way. I was just thinking, kind of as we're talking about this too, like going back to being the oldest with a single mom with younger siblings. I'm like imagining that, there's ways in which I felt responsible for my mom's emotional well-being, right? And I was a good kid. I was a nice guy, and that's the formula for it. You want to take care of your mom. You don't want her to be upset. And I think, for I'm certain for me to a certain extent that created some resentment about that, about feeling like I have to caretake for another person's emotional
Mhm.
need. And especially in that case where like really that should have never been my responsibility for, to with the parent. And again, it's not something, my mom was a phenomenal mom. Like it's not even a big deal. And there certainly wasn't ever like intentionally abusive, but I know that was something that as I have gotten older and, like the extreme for me was swinging in this, like, I'm not responsible for anyone else's emotional. And
Right. Well, that's avoidance, right?
right, right. If you can't pull your stuff together, well, it's all on you.
Right.
And that's not actually how I want to show up either. I want to be present for it and support the person, but not take it on as it's my issue. And I think again, that's where the work comes in. That's the kind of more sweet spot for showing up there. It's not just about being there, but it's about being there in a way that the other person receives and feels and is supported.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, because we've both been at this work and tried it in real life. And when I was in my, failed engagement, I was relentless about wanting my ex to see, gosh, my son is not going to give it up. I just texted him, I'm thinking, and he's not going to stop texting me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This
Oh, it's
is really
okay.
distracting. But yeah, so I was relentless. Um, and I literally, um, there, he go away now. He got his answer. Sorry. He's not going to stop until he gets an answer. Okay. Um, but I was relentless, like when you were talking about that blaming, shaming, criticizing. What happened is I started there and I realized that I was not going to receive any success in bringing my stuff like into the ring. But like there was an aspect of me, and I think this is really important for the Polarity Lab. There was an aspect of me that didn't need to be right, but still needed to deeply be seen and heard.
Yes.
And so, really, it ended up destroying the relationship because I was okay with not being right, and I had to learn the art of bringing things to the table. And I think I did that beautifully. I can say that I did learn. I did really, really learn how to communicate effectively, um, like an art form. But what didn't sit well, I think if men and women are listening to this for Polarity Lab, is without being seen and heard, I couldn't move forward. I had to be fully witnessed by the masculine. And that's what I think you're getting at is like, it's not okay. And this is where the male has to have really strong boundaries because I also learned I don't want to be a bulldozer. I don't want to be right. I don't want to be that person that's pointing the finger at the other person and just being like, you need to be wrong so I can be right. That's like highly unhealthy. Um, and I don't want nor strive to be that person. But what is so profound and so important about what you're saying is the ability to be able to see and witness. And I think that's really the golden key. And that is an art form too.
So for someone out listening who's wanting to more connect with their feminine and like you said, be able to bring this what they're experiencing in a way that can better be received. What's like one maybe simple little suggestion or practice or something that you found valuable? And I know we'll talk more about stuff like this in between the
Yes.
polls and
And it is an art form. That's why I think the Polarity Lab is so, so potent medicine is that you don't just arrive. It is like practice. It's like going into practice again and again and again, and just it becomes an art form. You get better and better and better. You
yes.
get more and more equipped and like more talented at it as you go. So that's why the Polarity Lab is like I'm not trying to just like sell it, but no, it really, really is an art form. But really tapping into what I've talked about on so many of these labs is like really tapping into my soma and my own nervous system regulation and like going inside of myself and identifying where the pain lies. Like, am I feeling heart palpitations in my heart and is it racing? And like for me to just be like, I'm hurting, this hurts, like without any words at all, like without any explanation, any backstory, any story at all, just like I'm hurting. I'm my heart is hurting, like I'm aching inside, like to actually identify the somatic, because here's the thing, nobody can argue with your feelings.
Mhm.
I feel hurt, I feel sad, I feel frustrated, I feel jealous, I feel angry. Like you can't argue with somebody's feelings. You can argue whether somebody's right or wrong. You can argue about who did what, who said what, on what time, what hour, what day. And like you can circle around that till the cows come home and you're still not going to get there. Like you can try to beat a dead horse again and again and again, and it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to get you anything. I mean, but if you tell somebody you're hurting inside, I mean, that's just your raw, pure form of being a human. And so when I moved away from like the facts, because like, I mean,
Can I say, it sounds like you're saying like you started being intentional about getting out of your head
yes,
into the deeper experience in the body
yes.
of
And
where the feelings are and what that experience is versus all the stories. This is why, this is what, this is
yeah, so like when I was in that, like, when you talk about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, when I was in fight mode, there was no ability to get into my nervous system safety.
Mhm.
Because like when you're fighting with your partner, you're in fight, flight, freeze, or you're in fight mode. You're not in nervous system safety.
Right.
So how are you ever going to arrive to a healing place from a place of not being in nervous system safety? So what would happen is I would go in from fight into like a lot of times just being like dumbfounded,
Mm.
like, and then I would go into even like sometimes spawning or freeze mode. Like I would go through all four stages because that last relationship I was in like triggered every core wound I had.
Yeah.
Every core, my deepest, most vulnerable core, which really comes down to like abandonment
Sure.
and the fear of abandonment. But like it literally triggered like every deepest core wound that I had. And I had to like eventually realize that all of that wasn't nervous system safety for me. And the only way I could find nervous system safety was to identify where the pain was and how it was manifesting in me,
Mm.
and to just be like raw in that. And I don't think you'll ever like I said with the Polarity Lab, you can never win in a relationship from a place of fight.
Right. Right.
You can never, because you're not in a safe space within yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's truly where that safe space comes from. It comes from inside. We talk about
Yes, and that was like I knew it, but arriving there were two different things.
yeah. Yeah.
Like I knew I had to find it in myself, but for some odd reason, I kept outsourcing that as if that person was going to help me get there.
Right.
Like I kept thinking, if only you could witness me this way. But like I think for on the other side of the fence, had he just been willing to truly witness the pain, it would have allowed me to feel safe.
Right. Right.
Right? But I also had to find that on my own.
Right. And the power of your emotions and your heart and your wounds and your hurt, that can be scary to a male. And bring up again, the guilt, the I'm responsible. I don't, you know,
Well, and to his recognition, I had never been in a position in my life where I chose to be that vulnerable, to
mm,
allow the deepest aspects of myself to be seen. Meaning, it took somebody of his caliber to mirror to me. I had to finally arrive at a vulnerable place where even those aspects of myself could be like when I say seen, like witness, like if there was an aspect of like, I can go here now with you,
mm,
but I still never had the level of safety that I felt I required. And then after that relationship, I went deep and continued to go deep into my own nervous system safety. I you can't idolize another person to do that work for you.
right.
You can't idolize that they're going to be the one who can hold a strong enough pillar to your pain.
That's beautiful. We don't want to blame them and we don't want to make them our saviors, right? The hope
No,
is it's a partnership. We're looking for
yeah. But
partnership.
I think what we do in all of us when we first meet a partner is we idealize that person. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the romance of the polarity in the beginning. It's like this is the person. This is they're gonna be the, for the woman, it's like they're my knight in shining armor. Well, no, they're really not. They're human, they're fallible, they make mistakes, and they don't always get it right. And they're not ever gonna get it right
I love that.
because they can't read your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. But in that excitement and with the intensity of the polarity and the masculine and the feminine charged in the beginning of the relationship, it's easy to feel that and say, this is perfect. We're doing it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And what a beautiful thing to have. I mean, to have the level of polarity where, like I said, that there's a sense where the most deepest vulnerable aspects of ourselves can be revealed. But then you have to have two people cultivating their nervous system safety to allow that to flourish too. And that's why these labs, like, I think that's what will really um there's so many things to unpack. I mean, you could do a month studying polarity alone. I mean, I did. I spent a whole month in Italy studying
Yeah.
energy of the masculine and feminine energy within myself and with others. Like it's a dance, as you said. So
Love it.
yeah, yeah. So, but we started this like with the masculine and feminine energy. And you talked about holding that container, um, but like the containment is what the feminine needs is to feel at its basic core safe and secure.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a lot of women today, that's a bold and brave ask to allow that container to shift maybe in the relationship, right? Because, and again, this isn't, for a couple again who's wanting to bring more polarity into the relationship and into their dynamic, this doesn't mean every single aspect of the relationship has to be thrown on its head. But there may be situations where a strong, powerful, woman who in the professional life and even in the home life has been, hey, this is the schedule, these are the meals, these are the kids, is able to let go of some of that control so that another kind of container and energy can come around that relationship or the intimacy, right? Where that polarity wants to come up. And that's
Yeah,
scary. That's scary for
it
the
totally is.
yeah, and
Yeah, I mean,
it's scary for the guy who's been, hey, I'm gonna zip it up. I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna pay money. You tell me where you need the kids. Like I'm gonna be the good, doting husband here to support my amazing, powerful, partner. And it's a shift. It asks a lot. It's a scary thing for a guy too in that position.
yeah, well, that's the scary part is the vulnerability, but it is precisely that takes the polarity to the next level
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because that's where you get more and more intimate,
Right.
right?
Right.
The layers of the onion can peel back and then your truer selves can be fully revealed.
Yeah.
The vulnerability is priceless because then there's really true intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool, we've done a number of these conversations and been they haven't like focused solely on the sexual engagement between a couple, but that is part of this conversation. And that's probably something we should be intentional and at some point for one of these polarity labs, make that the focus. But I
Yeah,
feel yeah, but I feel like this is a good one. And I know we could talk about this for another hour and a half, 2 hours.
yeah. Oh my gosh, you and I can talk about this stuff, yeah, so much. But yeah, and I do apologize so much for my son. Like just would not be relentless calling my
Yeah.
phone during this Polarity Lab. So hopefully it's enough for people to sit through and hear the
Yeah,
things you're trying to say.
yeah, the conversation was still happening. Why don't you
Mhm.
just say a little bit about our workshop on, coming up in February on the 21st, 22nd, right? That weekend after Valentine's Day. Just is there, what would you want
Well,
to
so I say a few things. Number one, you don't have to be a couple. You can be a single or a couple. Ideally, if you're coming as a single, we'll partner you up with, not a partner, like it has to be the opposite sex, but that you'll be partnered with someone. And if not, then you or I will step in to be the partner of that single person. So you don't have to be in a relationship to come to the Polarity Lab. But actually, a lot of what happens inside the Polarity Lab is acclimating yourself towards vulnerability, like without any of the stuff we talked about. So if you are in a relationship and you're feeling distant, or maybe you feel really, really close to your partner, but you're wanting to go deeper into there's no sexual stuff happening in the Valentine's Polarity Lab, but what it does is it cultivates a deeper level of magnetism. So just kind of what we touched upon, those aspects of ourselves that are vulnerable can start. There's like enough prompts and questions and activities to stir the pot, if you will, to open up kind of a portal into the deeper layers of our being that does bring about magnetism. So I think I mentioned this in other ones, but I've worked with couples that hadn't touched or been intimate for one of them was over a decade. And by the end of the weekend, like they were just like, whoa, the like two couples that participated in my first Polarity Lab were like, this was like this changed a whole decade of our life because there's this lack of polarity that can happen as we go through the motions of life and we're not learning someone new again,
Yeah,
like re-experiencing them for the first time. So a lot of the practices, there is instruction, but it's nice because there's like teaching, and then there's a practice, and then there's also a coming together and kind of metabolizing what happened in the practice. Again, all non-sexual, but just cultivating deeper levels of intimacy. So you could be like a partnered like a female single and a female single and you could still create magnetism, right, if one person's taking on the polarity opposite.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
um
It is. It's going to be a interactive. There's going to be it's real, tangible, transformation happening for people that want to come and start doing this work with us. I'm really excited.
yeah, and like there's so much as a single that you can do in your own self-exploration with your own masculine and feminine energy that can serve you for, I mean, for a very long time. I mean, when I cultivate and work on, my own feminine energy, I mean, it's like the layers of the onion keep unfolding within in myself because I'm not a master of this either. I'm just learning as I go.
That's right.
But I can definitely tell you it's life transformative um, and I just think, yeah, like Valentine's is such a good time. We're not yet in the spring and summer, like spring fever or whatever, but like it's kind of like that dormant time of the year. I like February because it's kind of this dormant energy that you can kind of go deeper into self-reflection and discovery.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Um,
Well, we're going to keep
yeah.
putting that information out. We'll be sharing it here. We thank and appreciate everybody who's watching or commenting or sharing the stuff we're putting out. I just keep getting feedback that people appreciate it and
You
enjoy it.
do good, 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 good. I'm so glad.
And I
Yeah.
enjoy it so much. And I'm
I
great.
do. It's like a fun part of the week for me.
Me too. Me too. I'm grateful for these conversations. And Paige, I appreciate you've been putting out smaller little condensed clips from these conversations in
Yeah, yeah, and I'm gonna amp them up too now that February is like right around the corner. Hit it hard and try to get some good group of people to this. I mean, I again, if people are listening to the variant, I just can't express enough how transformative this work is. And if people do come and they really resonate with it, like that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, I appreciate you. I'm gonna
Okay.
go stop this recording and
Mhm.
cancel or stop the Facebook Live, and then we'll see you again in the next Polarity Lab.
Thank you. Thank you.